Welcome. Hello, Erica. Thank you for joining us today. And Deb's, nice to see you. Thank you for coming. And Jack, thanks for coming up. We're going to start promptly at noon, but I'm glad you guys can all join me today. And Tracy, you've joined us. What a pleasure. I know I can't see you, but at least I can see who's attending, and it's really fun to watch you come in. A few more minutes, and then noon will be here, and we will start. Today is a very special day. As we're launching our Rethink Retirement webinar series, and it's fun to get everybody going on the first one. Yes, Tracy, you can unmute. Tracy, I know you raised your hand.
Can you hear me now?
I can. What's
That
up?
was weird. Did you unmute me?
I unmuted you. You raised your hand. I
Okay.
thought you wanted to speak.
Yep. For some reason I couldn't. I've got this open twice, so I'm gonna go close one out. I'll be right there.
You're going to close up your mute, unmute yourself.
How many people do you have signed up?
40.
40. Wow.
Yep.
You've touched on something, I think.
Um,
Are we the only ones here yet?
no, there are about 15 of us.
Okay.
You should all be in the room, and I'm going to start in exactly 1 second right now. And welcome, everybody. Tracy, can you mute yourself? I'm going to let you mute. How's that? And if you need to talk, raise your hands, folks, and I'd be delighted to open up the mic. It's a pleasure to have you all here. I'm honored that you've joined us for today. We're in the process of rethinking retirement. And as Tracy just said, we have opened up something that's of great interest to folks. And I know others will be joining us. I'm going to shut this down. There we go. Today is in part conversation and part a lecture, a conversation that I'd like to have with you about what I've discovered about retirement and why my husband and I decided not to retire. But in doing the research, it's opened up a lot of insight into what people are doing, the kind of challenges they're facing. And many of you completed the survey that I sent out earlier and were very kind in your comments, and we're going to be sharing some of that today as well. Now, what I would like to do is to move and let us go over to sharing my screen and begin real stories from the edge of what's next. And what's interesting today is that I want to take you through this in terms of stories. Some of the folks who are here have not only read the book or in the book, and some of the folks who have been interested in knowing more about what others are doing have asked me share the stories, because remember, we understand what's going on through the stories that we hear and how that changes our own. Who am I? For those of you I don't know, I'm a corporate anthropologist. And for over 2 decades, I've been in business. The PR firm who launched me said, Andi, you're a corporate anthropologist that helps companies change. And in fact, that's exactly who I was and what I've done. I'm an author. I've got 4 books out, and Rethink Retirement is my 4th. Several of them have won awards, and they've all brought me wonderful clients to help them do something people hate to do, change. I host On the Brink with Andi Simon. My podcast is 8 years going now, and it was ranked 18th among the top 100 podcasts on the topic of change. You think I like change. Actually, people hate change. And when they hire me, they put me in a closet, lock the door, and say, hiring you was all I wanted to do. I really don't want to change. But today is a time to talk about retirement as a time of change. So my job and my passion, my purpose is to help people see, feel, and think in new ways when they're standing on the edge before clarity arrives, before they fall off that ledge into the brink. So what are we going to do today? I came upon retirement as a focus for me by chance and by luck. I want to share with you how that happened, because it'll give you a context for why I find this so important and interesting and why it's become, in some ways, my own purpose. But the real catalyst was my husband's story. Now, I know my husband is watching us today, so I'm not sure he knows how I'm telling our story. But this is what happened. My husband, Andi, his name is also Andi. We are the Andis. Built a business to the 5th largest in the summative assessment industry and sold it in 2011. And on the way home, he called me and said, I'm not retiring. He said, people are going to ask me if I've sold the business so I can retire. No, I'm joining your business. Now, I must tell you that press release was going to be interesting, but here he was coming into a business on anthropology. He was a business entrepreneur, an excellent one. He had built several businesses. What was he going to do for mine? What did he do? He rewired himself. And I use that word with great intentionality, because it wasn't that he knew what he was doing, but he picked up clients almost immediately in healthcare, about which he didn't know a lot, and started to build websites, social media, and begin to help them grow their business. And he still has clients, and he enjoys working with them and doing other things. But he became the catalyst for our journey, because one of the things that was going on at that time was I had a wonderful professional services firm, an accounting firm in Houston. I worked with them for 7 years. And my job was to help them develop the expertise, change their brand, and prepare for the retirement of their founding partner. Now, Paul Grossbard is a person in my book, and he was unable to be with us today, but his story is a wonderful one because the organization prepared for his retirement systematically. Part of my job they told me often, was to prepare the next generation to take on what Paul had created beautifully, to manage the clients elegantly, know how to talk to them, to develop new skills and new roles. Paul was interesting because he didn't have just a financial plan, he had a life plan. And his job, he said, was to prepare for the next stage and the next chapter with such intentionality that he was going to be really able to do the things he always had wanted to do, but the taxes always got in the way. He never wanted to do another tax return for anyone but himself. And so Paul's story in the book begins to open up the conversation to how organizations can begin to prepare for transition. The second thing was that I was invited to become an anthropologist in a senior living community in Oregon. The CEO had contacted us, so in 2023, I went, and in that community, I lived in two different locations. One was extremely wealthy, a little bit really special, and the other very special, but a little more middle class. And I learned a great deal about those people and what they had retired from and to, and how this was changing their lives. I'll tell you more about their stories, but two things that were really important. In the more middle class one, most of the people were there by their children. They wanted them in a safe place during the last stage of their lives. Were they happy about it? Some. Some of them told me it felt like a prison. And oh, by the way, I'm on the Mediterranean diet and they don't serve that here. And the explanations about why they were less than great happy came lots. And the one in the very wealthy one was fascinating because the men there had all been successful in their prior lives. And now they told me, I have nothing to do. And I don't like the events that the director puts on. So we formed committees. What else do businessmen do? They form committees. And they would take all of their recommendations to the executive and he would promptly delete them. They weren't respected, they didn't have a purpose, and they weren't happy. So the CEO who hired me said, why aren't they happy? I said, well, it's not the facility, but it is the experience. And so we'll talk more about what I learned there. But then, as Andy and I were talking about what happens when we don't retire, I said, I don't really know what retirement is. I may not want to be in an assisted living or an independent living, but what is it? So I started to interview. Now, Andy said to me, that's a good book, which meant I will write it and he will applaud. But we really did this together because it was time to really discover what was retirement. So I reached out to my network and they brought me dozens and dozens of people of all types from all walks of life. I can't thank them often enough, because I enjoy listening to stories and then trying to find the meaning in them. We're meaning makers. After 60 of them, I said, I have enough here. Let me put them into a book and see what develops. And out of it came Rethink Retirement, that little book behind me here. It was so exciting to launch my fourth book because there was something more meaningful here than just a book. Now, I'm going to talk to you more about what I learned and what's in the book, but I reached out to all of you, and many of you completed the survey I sent out. Some of you who signed up late didn't get the survey. I'd be delighted to send it to you. But almost half of you said, my concern is who will I be without my work identity? Major question. The other major concern was, how do I plan my days? Several said, what's my purpose? And a couple said to me, we're blessed. We have no concerns. We're happy. An interesting mix, but a great reflection of the audience today, but also what people are concerned about. Now, I pulled up some of their comments, and it sort of set the stage for what I thought I should do today, together with you. How do you continue to reinvent your life? A great, great line. How do I manage a balance with so much to do? What an interesting observation about volunteering and dreams and the other things they were interested in. What would it take for us to have a positive attitude towards aging and excitement in what we can contribute in this phase of life? Can we make retirement something positive instead of something lost? What do we think? Why do we think so often that our identity is who we were when we worked? Aren't we all so much more? I'm going to talk a lot about identity because that's the first thing that goes away. If I don't have a business card, who am I? And then What did I do? How can I better clarify my purpose and find ways to achieve it? Humans are meaning makers. We need to know that we matter. Purpose is part of that. Is there a model I can use in my community to engage with other retirees? Tracy Miller's here today, and as we get toward the conversational part, I'm going to ask her to talk about what she might be doing with Louise and others who I've met through Luster or meetups to try and do that when you're learning to build new communities. Why does retirement seem easier for some and more challenging for others? These were all your thoughts from which I developed today. So we're going to do this together. What I'd like to do is what happens to you when work ends with this disruption? Would you do me a favor in the chat? Drop one word or phrase in the chat and what does retirement mean to you? Send them along.
Andy, the chat's disabled.
Oh, no. Well, thank you. I didn't know they disabled the chat. I wonder if I can re-enable it. Let's see. Can it work now?
Yes, it's available now.
Don't ask. I have no idea. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, chat up. I think all of you are worried about freedom or can't wait for it. There are two sides to freedom. Doing what I want when I want. You know, Janet, that is a great, great thought. Control of my time. Um, Jack, renewal. What's the next stage all about? Freedom to do what I enjoy. One woman said to me, I'm free. And I said, and what are you going to do? She said, I have no idea. It scares the crap out of me. Um, this is really interesting. Lots of unstructured time. And for Stella, that's both a blessing and, oh my gosh, what do I do with it all? Perfect. Perfect. Rewiring. I loved Andy's rewiring. It's become quite a theme for us. Okay. Giving back. Yes. That's great. You can't see the other folks' responses. Let me see if I can do that since I got that one. Um, save chat panels can chat with. Let's try everyone for the moment. Can you see everyone else's by chance? Yes, no, no. Do-do, do-do, do. Let's try that one. Not yet. Yes, no. Those are all the buttons I can push. Not yet. Do, do. Well, I've done the best I can do, and I'll remember this for next time. So I think we have to click on everyone for everyone to see our messages. On the two, can you click on everyone? Let's try that. Does that work? Yep. Hey, magic. Yay. All we have to do to please each other. Oh, gosh. Okay, we're going to do more. Don't lose your chat skills. Here we go. My thoughts. Retirement is one of the most profound identity transitions our human, us, will ever go through. You can answer in your chat, but has anyone ever practiced retirement? I'm sort of fascinated. I actually had one friend who told me he took a year off when he was in his 30s because he couldn't decide if he wanted to be in corporate or entrepreneur. And so what did he do? He retired, he said. His wife was a teacher and he didn't have to work. So now it's very interesting that he said to me, I discovered that skiing, riding my horse, and riding my motorcycle were fun, but not sufficient. So I came back to work. His wife probably also helped him. But nobody practices retirement, and nobody really knows what it is. Pat, this is your third attempt, and I have a hunch you're still thinking about what did I do and how did I do this? So, some thoughts about this. Retirement requires a life plan, not just a financial plan. If you Google retirement, guess what comes up? All the YouTube on financial planning and how to do it, which buckets to take your money out of, which money to put into which. I have a bunch of wealth managers who I'm talking to who want to help us with the retirement program for their retiring investors, but they don't have life plans. It's not easy to simply change your life with enough money to know you can live forever and not know what you're going to do with your life. So it's much harder and more meaningful than we expected. Now, with the chat, what does it mean for each of you? It's complicated. It's a transition. It can be navigated. So give me some ideas. What do you think could be a really interesting way of thinking about this retirement you're doing? Margaret, you're partially retired, and that allows me to practice. Yes. Tracy, I know you're trying and moving over there. So retirement is going to be the freedom and the flexibility. And does that have any more meaning to it than that? I'm building a product with AI to help all of us retire better. Love that. Love to know more about it. And those of you who are dipping toes in, like Tracy, what I know is that a little at a time are small wins moving you towards something that you're not familiar with. Now, let me tell you about retirement from the perspective of humans. When you move into a place you're unfamiliar with, your brain begins to fry. It is designed to protect you. It doesn't want you to do unfamiliar things. And so it creates a lot of cortisol, and you actually feel pain in the mind, in the brain. It's asking you to stop. It's telling you this is dangerous. There's a lion around the bush. It's going to attack you. Stop. It feels that way. It's as if we've dropped into a foreign country. Maybe that's why I don't want to drop there. I've been to 40 countries. I know what that feels like. But maybe this movement into something unfamiliar is really not that comfortable. And since we haven't practiced, we don't know what's up and we're afraid. So it's very interesting. One of the women who was in the book, and I did a podcast with, M.L. Mackin, said to me, I had a wonderful year, and then I got depressed and had to go on medication, and I couldn't figure out what happened. I had a year doing all the things I wanted to do, and then there was nothing more for me to do. I'm sorry I left my job as a publisher, and now I'm going to try and refigure out what it is I want to do. It's complicated. Why? Little anthropology, it's a liminal phase. In between, ambiguity is, quite frankly, the most dangerous kind of place for people. You're betwixt and between. You don't know if you're this or you're that. One woman told me, and she said, I feel like I'm half-baked. I'm not fully here and I'm not fully there. And those of you who are moving between things are going to begin to think through, where do I find my most comfortable spots? We don't have any cultural scripts. The person who said, can't we design something so people are more comfortable moving into it? Yes, perhaps. Although I must tell you, when I lived in that senior living community, they were looking for a script. And they were fascinating to me because they were going to take this one. One man said, I just need to find new friends. I didn't know what to do. And that place designed it for him. He knew he got up in the morning. The men all had breakfast together. I thought it was wonderful to watch them. The women didn't. The women had breakfast in their apartments. They often were at the exercise center. But it was a structure and a script. But there's no ritual to help construct this if we're not in something like that. Now, what I don't want to do is underestimate the great pleasures that are here for many. And this is important because we worked hard. We finally got here, made it. I'm going to have fun. There's a whole chapter in the book about having fun. Do you know, it's hard to have fun when you haven't had so much time to do it in? So I'm going to ask you in the chat. You're looking to have fun. What kind of fun are you looking for? Traveling. Yes. Now, I tell you, I've been to 40 countries. Go for it. Exercise. Having enough time to work out. More tennis. Yes. Time with my grandson. Of course. Creativity and friends. Yes. I'm going to take up an art class. Creating. Group sports and travel. I think that's a great idea. Together. All of the things that you might not have had time to do when you were working. Now, for all of you, As you're thinking about it, are you doing it now that you are in either transition or retired? This is what I hear, and this is what I heard in all the stories. I want the freedom to explore, travel, art, new hobbies. Now, I'm not going to use myself as an example, but I must tell you that when my daughters finished college, my husband and I decided every 90 days we were going to go away. That's how we got to 40 countries. And I took up art again, and I had a woman I spent every Tuesdays with. Now, people say you already retired 30 years ago. No, I just had a different idea about blending work and non-work. New hobbies. I have some friends who've taken up art now that they've retired, and they're happy. They just don't know what to do with all the paintings. It's not that easy. Um, then the relationships. I know Tracy wanted a relationship with her grandchildren. One of the gentlemen in the book, as he sold his business, couldn't wait to be with his grandchildren. And he moved to where the grandchildren were. And he spoke to me recently and he said, that was really cool until my son and daughter-in-law decided to move someplace else. So now we're going to move also. Everything has all kinds of wonderful unintended consequences with it. One of the women said, I have 5 nonprofits I've been on the board of. Now that I'm not engaged in business, I'm going to get more involved in those community activities. I have the time, but I'm not sure which ones I want to be more in with. The questions are profound, but they're in your hands. With this new sense of time and pace, how can I be in the moment? How can I time with myself? Can I sit with my cup of coffee on the porch on a beautiful morning dawn and enjoy the moment? Now, giving back, I'm going to volunteer, mentor, board service, teaching. I will tell you that this is all extremely important. And some people are on boards with great joy. Some are mentoring others, and some are having a difficult time volunteering. Some of the nonprofits said to me, I have a real hard time with all the retirees who show up at my door. One story in particular, she said to me, the gentleman arrived. He'd been chief financial officer of a company. He offered his services to us for free. And I said, thanks, I will talk to my board. And my board came back and said, no, thank you. If you'd like to make a monetary contribution, we would be delighted. But we don't need your financial service or your finance expertise for us. We're already here. Thank you. And they were almost a little insulted, he said. And she said, I wasn't quite sure how to handle it. But this is all part of the next stage. One of the things to keep in mind, if you have been volunteering before you retire, it's easier to continue that relationship. If you've been on a board before you have. So begin to prepare for whatever comes next if you're in transition. If you've already retired, you've got some new work to do. But here's what you need to do. Reflect and rebuild. The research, to me, came up with the 4 key foundations of self. I'm an anthropologist. What does it mean to be a human? You need to know who you are. And now you're becoming something new. We're going to dig deep into each one of these. The structure. How do I design my days? One wonderful guy said to me, I get up, I go to the gym, I have my coffee, and then I have nothing else on my calendar. What am I going to do? One of the women said, I have nothing on my calendar for the rest of my life. What am I doing? Interesting. Purpose. Where do I still matter? And to whom? And how? And how do I build new places where it matters that I'm there? And community. Who am I connected to now? Now, the one thing that I've been telling folks as I coach them or in my workshops, it's not about something wrong with you. If this transition feels harder than you expected, it's because you're redesigning your life, not ending one. One of you asked, what is this I've gotten into? A new design. And nobody has much practice. So what are we going to do? The first big question is about identity. Think about this. Who am I without my job title? What you did shaped your identity. You came into the office or wherever you were working, your school, as Janet would tell you, and you were a teacher. You were an executive secretary. You were a president. You were whatever it was. Your job card, your business card told you who you were. And it anchors you into the role that others see you at. You still need an identity. You still need to answer that big question. What am I? And this becomes real important because it's not about money or boredom or the loss of status. It's often about who am I? I know one of you have been, and you've had several jobs over your life, several careers, and now we're in this new one. How do I define myself? I want you to take a moment and begin to say what you're going to say at a cocktail party or just with friends. Who am I without my title? But I'm going to tell you a story and then I'm going to ask you to chat up. I was at a Luster event 2 weeks ago, and Sally Sussman, who was an executive at Pfizer, told us a great story. She had sort of been moved into retirement, and she said, I went to a conference after that. And on my business card, and she had her card up there, her name tag, was a picture, Sally Sussman, and under that it said, formerly at Pfizer. And that's when she had her epiphany. Oh my gosh, am I going to be a formerly forever? And then she went back and redesigned her identity. And so then she showed us another tag from the next conference she went to, and she was now an author, a consultant, an expert, anything else, and she made it up. She said, but who am I without my title? So tell me, who are you without your title? Tell us in the chat. I'm just laughing like I used to. How are you going to define yourself when you go to that cocktail party? Are you going to say, I'm retired? Any ideas? No ideas? Are you going to simply say, I'm going to be a community leader? Yes. A practicing elder. Oh, I love that. Retired and loving it. Good. A world advisor, a world traveler. I'm a builder. I haven't figured that out yet. We're going to do lots of that. A volunteer, a mentor, a tutor, a writing coach. Perfect. An outgoing, friendly person who likes to interact with others. Gail, that's lovely. But listen to them all. You're all different. And this is really the interesting part. You have an opportunity to redefine yourself. I'm a professional certified coach and speaker. Now, people say to me, who am I? And I will tell you that I learned from my daughters that I am more than just a corporate anthropologist that helps companies change. I'm more than just an author and a podcaster. And one of my daughters, after a party they threw for me, said to me, Mom, you've been a good mom. Why don't you ever tell people I've been a mother? You're also a great wife. We've been married 58 years. How do I get caught into I'm going to be who my professional life is and ignore the rest of it? I share that with you because through the retirement phase, it's a great time to think about those things on how many complex places you've been and who you are. So we have to reframe. Identity isn't something you lose. It's something you now must rebuild intentionally. And I'm urging you, as you're thinking about this, to write down that new identity that you're beginning to think about. You just gave it to us in the chat. Think about it the next time you go to a conference, a cocktail party. One of the women at a business networking event said something very profound to me. She said, I've been going here for a long time, but I retire in a month. Do you think I still can come? And what will I tell people I am? And she said, I don't want to say I used to be. I formerly was. And another story, Andi and I took a trip to Normandy a number of years ago. We were the only people on the trip still employed. We had our own businesses, and it was like we were entrepreneurs. We can name ourselves in different ways. But the rest of the folks were by and large retired. And we had a fascinating time listening to them tell us what they had been, not what they were now. And we asked them, what are you doing now? It was interesting listening to them struggle a little bit to find identities for themselves. Now, some of them volunteer. Some of them, spend time with grandkids and family. Some of them are enjoying canasta, mahjong, and pickleball. They weren't doing pickleball then. But this is all about who we are. Now, the second thing is how much of our days are or were shaped by work. I'd love you to share with us. What do you think? How much of your time was previously developed by work? How much of your morning, your midday, your midweek? Tell us. 100%. Oh, I love that. Identity is not what you do, but who you are. Your core. Agreed. 100%. all of it. 75% Mary Beth, you had some time to yourself. This is so interesting. Because when you think about it, just spend a moment. Um, what is your definition of work is a great question. And Rick, 50%. You can share with us what that means. This is so cool. Now, as you're thinking about it, I love you to do something. Put together a little chart about what it was that you did that was your structured day. Your structure wasn't a prison, it was a scaffold. I want you to think of it differently. It allowed you to build something. And you need structure. You need a rhythm, a meaning, belonging. And when it disappears, time can feel endless. And when purpose fades, you wonder if you still matter. When community weakens, loneliness creeps in, even among busy people. So give some time to think about what gives you the energy now to get up in the morning and go do what? Because in the past, you were raising 3 kids while working, so 75-25, I love that. But think through, what is it that now I do in the morning if you are tired or transitioning? How do I get up and I don't have a calendar? Do I have meetings to go to? Do I have a doctor's appointment to go to? One of my doctors said people retire so they have more time to visit the doctors. And I laughed. And I said, well, not me, but it was an interesting point. And I can't define work because it's very interesting because we blended it so much. But as you're thinking about it, it structures the day in very important ways. How many meetings did you have that were set up by others? And now what are we going to do without them? If my calendar disappeared tomorrow, tell us, what will you do on Monday? And how would you begin to arrange it in some fashion? Any thoughts? Thoughts? Anything important? Eat better, exercise, read for 30 minutes. Love it. I met a woman who runs a big business and she gets up at 4:30 every day to work out. Look at my values. Add to retired widower. I volunteer 3 mornings a week, but not until 8 a.m. I have to log off. Goodbye, Gail. Go to the beach. I love that. Why not just begin to think about what is it that I'm going to do? I start walking. I keep a list of to-dos, even reading. I meditate. Yes, all kinds of great things. So if your calendar disappeared tomorrow and you've retired, it's time to now write a new calendar. One of the women in the book, she and her husband sold their business. They were so excited. Then she developed breast cancer. Now she's gone through the recovery and she's in remission. It's 2 years. And she and I had lunch and she said, my problem is I don't know what to do with my days. I'm going to try and go back into business. And we talked there about what would be a good next stage for her. Because this was a team sport and now her husband is doing different things than he used to. And she now has to think through how fortunate she is to be in remission and not waste a single day, but doesn't know quite where to begin. And we were talking about how to just start. It's not hard to start. It's hard to know if it's the right stuff or not, but until you start, you don't know. Then I want to talk about purpose. In the workplace, we're trained to measure our worth based upon output, deliverables, revenue, quarterly results, problem solved. I'm sure you all have been defined that way. Your projects were completed. Your tasks were done. You were promoted. You did wonderful, wonderful things that were exciting to you. And now you have to find a new answer to what does my day mean and matter. Now I'm looking at my notes because the research is extremely compelling. It's very sobering. Systematic reviews have shown that people at all stages of life don't simply want to fill their time. They want to do things that are meaningful to them. Yet our retirement planning infrastructure focuses exclusively on financial preparedness. Will I have enough money? And no resources helping them answer the question, will I have enough meaning? So now the question for you is, will you have enough meaning? What are you going to be doing that gives you meaning? And what does meaning mean? This is very important because if you frame it right, we're moving from achieving things to contribution. Being a volunteer means, I was on Eva's board and I served food to the hungry and the homeless for a long time. I was there for 6 years. And this was a contribution. I wasn't achieving anything. They were. But together we were making a contribution, and I know that's what you're looking for. What kinds of contributions are you making? Any ideas? Where do you find purpose now? Can you share? Love it. Volunteering at your old school. Janet, I love that story. Bring in kindness. Rick, that's lovely. Play a role in the next generation. Absolutely. You become the role model. Stacy, I tell you a story all the time about your tech sessions for elders at your parents' senior centers. Helping lower income students after school, volunteering as a big brother. These are great. I'm on a board and I also took on a volunteer role, helping people and helping my adult children, advising, I suspect that's small business, coaching others who are leading organizations. Each of you has found something that gives you purpose. And Pat, as I think about what you have done over your life and career, and now you're coaching others, it becomes meaningful, mostly for them and for you. It's a collaborative meaning. Then, what's the importance of belonging? Who do you live with now? This is the one that broke my heart more than anything. How do we make sure that we're not lonely? I'll tell you what really disturbed me were successful women who either had not retired yet because they were afraid of what happens when they're alone, or had retired and were very upset because they were lonely. I also found lonely men who didn't have a spouse or a companion. Many of the men in the senior living community really said that their new friends were their other friends there, and it broke down the loneliness. The men at the senior living community that ate together said, this is where we talk and we share ideas and stories and we read the newspaper and we decide which football game we're going to watch and what beer we like. They needed a place where they could kill the loneliness and do it together. But if that's not your lifestyle, then it becomes real important to be intentional about it. The woman who took the train every day into the city and went to her office discovered that she really left all of her friends there. They didn't really want to have lunch anymore. They had nothing to talk to her about. She had left them, was now an outsider. There was a gentleman I met at a business networking event, and he was telling me how he had left his business and he was very happy. And then all of a sudden he kept calling people there that he wanted to have lunch with or talk to, and they too had no time for him. He didn't realize that he was now no longer part of them. Who knew? They certainly didn't know, and they certainly weren't prepared. And the men in particular, who devoted so much of their time to being in the office, now were finding themselves without any friends. This is real interesting, going back to your chat. We're reading, growing, great idea. I need to investigate adult education courses. I've organized activities for our Lake community and book club. Janet, that's wonderful. You can tell us more about how it's going. Once a month in small towns. This is all in your hands, and this is meaningful. Building a community for retired executive women, yes. Now, with that in mind, then the question becomes, what about all the rest? I met somebody and they said, I live in this wonderful community and I've decided to knock on the doors of my neighbors to see if they were alone and if we could socialize together. She was lonely and wanted to make friends, and it worked. 2025 global meta-analysis found that 28% of older adults worldwide experience loneliness. That's a third of older adults. Now the question is, can we knock on doors? Somebody yesterday told me about how he had made his mother really, after church, go to somebody's house to have lunch, and she didn't want to. And then she did. And then he said she couldn't stop talking about it. And she discovered that just reaching out to somebody else was really necessary for her own well being and theirs. No process for this. We have to make it up. The senior living community research I find fascinating as well. Almost 70% of them felt lonely most of the time before moving into a community setting. One gentleman in one of the facilities said, I really haven't met new friends here, but I'm so glad I'm not alone. Interesting. And the former U.S. Surgeon General declared loneliness and social isolation a national epidemic, warning that prolonged loneliness carries health risks comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. This is really serious. The Japanese call that nature bathing. It's very energizing. Spend as much time outside as possible in 5 years rewired. I've organized activities. Okay, this is perfect. I'm coming along here. Now, who was your community work-based? And when work ends, the community often dissolves. Belonging is not about finding a place with people like you. It's about finding places where you're known and needed. Move belonging from socializing to significance. And I think this is also about moving from success to significance. And it's really a fun way to begin to soften this from I left it all there to now I'm going to find something where I'm meaningful. And you're all doing it each on your own way. So this is this arc of who I was and who I'm becoming, a real identity question. This is the structure. How do I live my days? And what does that mean? How do I still matter? And where and with whom do I live this life? Now, if you're open to it, I'd love you to sketch out your next chapter. Let's try something small together. Sketch a week in your next life. Each of you have identified a challenge. What fills Monday? What are you doing midweek? Who are you learning with? What's your sense of contribution? And most of all, what's missing? Take a moment. Begin to think about it. Would you like to share? I can take you off mute if you'd like to tell a story a little bit. Just raise your hand. I'll take you off mute and you can talk to us. Any game? Tracy, go for it. Can you speak?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Perfect.
Okay. And so the question is essentially, what does the week look like?
Yeah. You and I
Okay.
worked on this together. How's it developed?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I think there's some things that I would like to do daily, such as exercise, and that's a priority. So I would schedule that kind of thing first. And then in my particular situation, I'm recently moved to Chicago and I don't have many female friends. So that is an area that I'm working on. And these are friends through Luster and local friends that let's go have lunch and things like that. And then around that, I have a priority right now one of my priorities is spending time with my grandson. And in those between those things and the time that I commit to my remaining work, which is about 20 hours a week, that pretty much fills up my schedule. How that changes going forward, I'm not exactly sure. I'm still sort of in that process of figuring it out. But so that's kind of what my week looks like.
Tracy, would you mind sharing your life before this phase? Because you're in transition now.
Yes. So I have worked as a Japanese linguist in the automotive industry for many years, and then more recently, about 6, 7 years ago, moved to a company that is in logistics automation in Japan. And through that company, I have traveled pretty much all over the world for the most part. Um, and still working very much with the language. And one of the questions in my retirement is, do I want to sort of do something in that vein just to keep those connections and still, sort of the connection with Japanese, which has been such a major part of my life since college days. Um, so that that is kind of where I'm at and what I am looking at. But like you said, I'm kind of a techie and I enjoy helping people figure out their tech and how to use tech to make their life easier and more effective and more independent as they age and live alone, especially.
I share your story and I do love it. Tracy is not a chapter in our book, but could easily be there, like so many others. But I thank you very much for coming and sharing it. And I'm going to turn to Deb. Now, there we go. Deb, who are you? And can you unmute or do I have to unmute you?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're good. Go for it.
Cool. I found out about you through Pat Shea, um, and I'm 5 years into my retirement. I was a chiropractor for 33 years, and the first couple of years, I had some knee replacement, blah blah blah, and so that sort of took up a little bit there. But now that I'm sort of back on my feet, my days, Mondays, I do a volunteer gig just for a couple hours. Then we all go out to lunch. Um, my days, I have to have my morning time. So I get up before my spouse and have my tea and miso and listen to the birds. And my challenge I picked up was I wanted to learn piano. I'm
Ah,
72, never taken any lessons anyway. So I bought a keyboard. I've been taking piano lessons for almost 2 years. I'm getting a real piano literally tomorrow. I'm so excited.
yay.
Um, I spend my days, I try to stay in touch with friends from out of town. Something I had an hour-long conversation with one of them yesterday. I got a few appointments, health stuff, acupuncture. I got a part-time job with a friend who, uh, anyway, she calls me her COO, which is Chief Organizing Officer. Anyway, so I help her declutter her house, and I found I'm really good at organizing, and
Ah,
it's just been kind of fun. So and then it took me a few months. Her house was a mess, and I was done, and I said, Maria, okay, it's been great. Thank you very much. And she said, well, I have a lake house. So now I'm going up to her lake house. It's sort of like I've manifested this cute little house on a very quiet lake up in the close to the national park in Big South Fork in Tennessee. It's gorgeous. It's quiet. Anyway, so I didn't see that coming. That was a real perk. So I think I don't like to over my schedule myself because part of me 5 years in is just, oh my God, not having a fucking schedule. It's just so freeing, and it's so like no alarm clocks.
I love
And
it. But you sound as happy. Is there something missing?
well, when I talked to Pat about it, I was thinking, I've really had a lot of travel, and I can a day can go, and every once in a while I go, I miss helping people, as a chiropractor on their healing journey. I don't want to physically practice again. Just it's so demanding. Uh, but part of me thinks, I got a lot of info and a lot of knowledge. Is there it's stirring a little bit up in there, but I'm not sure about that. But I'm kind of thinking about it, and I guess that relates to
Yeah.
purpose. Although I feel loved, cared for. I've got plenty to do. It's not like my days are like, oh, now what am I going to do? It's like, wow, it's nighttime already.
You
So,
sound like every day is a gift and you're not wasting a minute of it, are you?
well, I'm very PTC, present time consciousness. I mean, I taught that for 33 years. So I really, I'm not a big planner, but when Pat told me about the seminar, I thought, oh, no,
Well,
when I look at the future, I don't look that far. Whereas some people I know have 5-year plans and 10-year plans. And I'm like, oh, really? Well, I don't know. Today's Tuesday and I'm going to do Tuesday.
but as a role model, remember, it's through the stories that you share. I'm so honored that you're sharing it, that we can actually begin to see ourselves in a happy state, with every day being meaningful and not necessarily needing a plan for next year or 2 years or 3 years. Because we don't really, plans are there to give us some predictability, but we really never know what's going to happen. And detours are perfectly fine, right?
True.
True. You're great. There are some folks here that I don't want to impose on, but Janet Lowe, would you like to share your story? I know it so well from a chapter in our book, but since you've come today and you're from the far west, perhaps maybe you'd like to share as well. Can I make you, can you talk? Am I imposing?
Can you hear?
No. Yes, I can.
Okay.
Go
All
for it.
right.
Let's see. I'm going to, um, okay, I'm not gonna, okay, go, talk. You're it.
Okay.
You didn't come up here, so let's see. Oh, we'll put
Oh,
you
I don't
down.
know if I have my video on or not.
Well, that's okay. That's
Okay.
perfectly fine. Go for it. Thank you.
Okay. Yep. Well, I retired 3 years ago from full-time teaching. I was in education for 39 years. And I really wasn't, I really went back and forth about whether I should retire or not because I did like my job. But my husband has also been retired 3 years and he loves it. He has never once looked back. And he said, I wish you'd retire so we could travel. We don't have to travel on a school schedule. We can travel when we want. So I did retire, but then I worked part time as a reading teacher in the two parochial schools that are in our town. So that was 3 days a week. It was like nine, eight, yeah, 18 hours a week. Anyway, I did that for 2 years. And then I'm like, now I think I'm ready. I needed that transition time. And being an educator, I did a lot of research. Like I Googled all kinds of things about retirement. And so now I became a part of Luster, which is how you and I connected.
Right.
Um, I'm part of Road Scholar and Senior Planet from the AARP, so that I sometimes take class or listen to lectures online about places I'm interested in. And then I started thinking, okay, now I'm going to go start volunteering. So I made a list of all the places in town that I could volunteer at. And then I just started pursuing them. My favorite one is I volunteer at the school I used to teach at, but I only do it for, I said to the principal, I'm only coming in at 9 and I'm leaving at 11:30. And that's fine because everybody knows I hated getting up in the morning. I really hated it. And then I volunteer for Habitat for Humanity. I input data for them. And I work at a thrift shop that supports our homeless shelter. And I teach a woman who lives in Poland but is from Ukraine, and I teach her English through a program that I actually found out from a Luster conversation. And I volunteer at the art gallery once a month. And that keeps me busy enough, but like not overwhelmed. And so
I think you make me exhausted listening to you.
my kids say, you're working awful lot for somebody who's retired.
But actually, if you want to refine and redefine retirement, it's what you're doing, isn't it?
Yeah. And I did take on one other volunteer activity, and I just didn't enjoy it. And so I just said, you know what? Thanks for giving me the opportunity, but I don't think this is for me. And that's one thing about being retired. You don't have to do stuff you don't want to do.
I think that's great. Thank you for sharing. Deb, I don't know how to get your face off the screen here, but is that something you do or I do? Let's see.
I unmuted myself. I didn't know my face was on there.
Well, let's see.
I don't know how to, I didn't do anything to put it on.
Yes, I know. Okay, I just want to get back to me. I'd love to hear from one guy. I've heard from women. Rick Martin, I don't know you. Or Steve, I don't know you either. Would you like to share your stories or not? You can say no or yes, or um, I can let you talk. Any thoughts?
Uh, Hi, this is Rick.
Hi, Rick.
Hi. Um, yeah, I just happened to run across uh, the announcement for this. I thought, how interesting. So I'm the guy that said I I'm trying to adjust not only to retirement but also to being a widower. Uh,
Uh,
my wife of 57 years died 2 months ago, and I am giving myself a lot of grace for grieving and adjusting. I retired. Let's see, I'm 86 now. I retired at 82. I had a job that was really marvelous for me. I coached CEOs, uh, small to medium businesses, very similar to your background in some ways. Um, and it was a very fulfilling job for me. Uh, I am basically, well, I'm a retired CEO. I had three different businesses, and so moving into a helping role was just perfect. I retired to take care of my wife, and now that task is done. So I'm back into another kind of exploration, really. I've set up, because I'm a believer in rituals, I have set up some rituals that guide me through the day, a number of them around um, allowing for grief, building uh, building permission, if you will. So, and building time to be with. There's
mhm.
a poem that I came across that said, "When I die, let me. When I die, don't learn to live without me. Learn to learn to experience my love in a different way." And so that has guided, uh, if you will, my grieving. But I've been looking at a return to art. I used to be an architect for a while, and I love to paint. I also am learning the Native American flute in deference to my background and my heredity, if you will. So, I feel like a lot of me is filled. I wrote down. You said, "What is missing?"
Mhm.
Um, I am getting reacquainted with my grandchildren and my brother, who's a year and a half younger than I, and we grew up in a military family and were very close at one time. I just spent the Sunday with him, and we're learning about each other. We're relatively close, it's about an hour away. So there's that. What I wrote was missing is touch.
Mhm.
I am not lonely, but I miss touch. Um, actually, miss it a lot. But so I'm a happy camper, and in so many ways, I'm sad, but the sadness is it's moving to understanding more about this person I spent 57 years, like you,
Mhm.
with, and forgiving both of us.
Yes.
So I'm a fairly complex guy. Um,
Well, you may see yourself as complex, but I must tell you, today you're vulnerable, authentic, and absolutely wonderful to listen to. And I can't hug you, but I would love to because you've given us
oh,
a joyful story. Everyone telling your stories shares with us another way to see this stage in our life, which we are all going to share, and yet don't quite know how to. And everyone is saying ditto, God bless you. I think they all would love to share you and touch you because you've given us a moment of pleasure and joy with your own transition. And these are the things that we're all going to be facing. This is just beautiful. Thanks, Rick. This is just wonderful. Thanks for coming today.
thank you for the invitation.
Well, and thank you for joining us. Steve,
Yes.
I unmuted you. If you'd like to talk for a moment, I'd love to hear from you. I must say that guys and gals are just a little different. Not a lot, but a little bit different. Um, Stephen, is that a maybe yes?
Can you hear me now?
Perfect.
Hi, everyone. I guess I'm sort of an outlier within this group because I've been describing myself as involuntarily retired. My job ended. I'm 62, about a year and a half ago, and I'm really just trying to figure out the landscape. I'm doing a lot of volunteering. We moved and have spent the past year renovating a house. And now that that's done, I'm really kind of dipping my toe back in the water with some consulting. So I learned about you, Andy, through someone who's been to a couple of your sessions, a former colleague of mine named Mary Lou Mackin, and
Yes.
she was planned to be here today, and unfortunately she had a conflict.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure to knit together some consultant work, but not a lot. And I've started doing some volunteer work in the new town where I live,
Mhm.
and so far that's been great. So I'm spending my days doing a lot of exercising, visiting with my elderly parents, volunteering, and then increasingly more recently trying to spend time figuring out small projects I can take on that I find interesting.
But you know, you've gotten the opportunity. You're a young man. Forgive me, my father went to 100. So that I see life, it's a very long journey and but you have a time to now explore all kinds of things you might not have been able to do. Almost look at it as an opportunity, not a problem. You know, not a bad, but a good, and in some ways a nudge to do wonderful things that you wouldn't have been able to do while you were still working. Does that make
Oh
sense?
my gosh. And hearing other people speak throughout this session has been so meaningful because I haven't acknowledged some of the things that have been said that have happened to me, like not waking up with an alarm clock and sitting outside with my coffee every morning with my dogs these are things I never was able to do, especially when I had a lengthy commute. So I really have to kind of practice some gratitude because now that I'm beginning to
Mm.
understand that this transition is permanent, I'm not going to step back into a very complex role that like the one I left.
Well, that by itself was a gift for today. And I can only tell you that I will carry that with me because when the stories help us rethink ourselves, it's in our
Mhm.
mind. And all of a
That's right.
sudden, what was bad has now become, oh, maybe that's really good. And now your mind is going to say, oh, that is really cool. Let's do that some more, right?
Exactly.
I know. Well, I'm going to finish my talk because I've enjoyed yours. If and I will tell you that we'll be holding these webinars every month and all kinds of stuff, but I'm just joyful to be able to share with you. So let me give you the sort of the last part of what we have, because the idea is to leave you with a to-do list, some things that are actionable. Um, what does this mean for each of you? And quite frankly, you started to talk. Each of you was different, and so when I did 60 interviews, I had 60 different ways of doing it. I do think I have to turn somebody off here. Let's see. You're going to disable talking. Okay, there we go. Good. So if you're in transition and you haven't retired yet, um, and some of you who signed up said that's just it. Some thoughts. You're going to focus on the financial plan and your financial planner wealth manager, whomever it is going to be talking to you a lot about that. Go for it. But now the piece that you need to start to prepare for is a life plan. I thought Paul Grossbart said to me, I knew all the things I wanted to do. I tested some of them. He and his girlfriend spent a month in Italy. I mean, he was doing stuff in their preparation. He does a lot of nonprofit work. He's on the board of, Ronald McDonald's House. But now I've got to have a plan for the next stage where there's more here. As you're listening to each one of the people who graciously shared their stories, that plan can start before you get into it. Tracy's betwixt and between. And this is great because it's a time of transition and one can build all kinds of ways of beginning to build that community for ourselves. So don't wait. It's a good time to start. And then when you do, start with the identity. When we work together, the thing we start with is, okay, how am I going to define myself? What is it I'm going to say? As Stephen, as you were saying, I was pushed into this. You still haven't figured out who am I now. And so it's a good time to think through, write it down. When we write down the story, it sticks in our mind. When you start to tell people it, like we've done today, you begin to make it real, visualize it. And as you visualize what you're doing, all of a sudden a new you began to emerge. I do projects. I'm learning to play the piano. I'm beginning to experience all kinds of things. But as you visualize it, your mind begins to see it as you, and that's what it wants you to do. It goes to where it's familiar and pleasurable. And as you define what will replace the structure of work, you're going to begin to find new things that you might not have done before. Are they not work? I don't know. Is work the only good thing that we've done? Or can we blend these? We talk about work-life balance for mothers. Maybe it's for all of us. Can you explore interests, social groups, part-time roles before leaving full-time? Practice. And then have your routine supporting your health, your purpose, and your connection. Working out. Mike Zebrick is on our thing today. He's a proud worker-outer. And he loves to talk about the young folks who keep up complimenting him on how hard he's working to keep him healthy and active. If you don't take care of you, nobody else will. Because now is the time for us to be in charge, which sounds both a great blessing and, oh my gosh, how do I do this? Now, if you've already on your way, by design or by default here, don't get into the post-career void. You mentioned ML Mackin. She tells a story about having a year of great joy and then going depressed. And when we met and she told her story, both in our book and in our podcast, she said, I didn't have any idea what was going to hit me after a year of doing all the things I wanted to do. And then did I really not like working? Or did I not like the burnout of it? Or the self-reflection? There are some wonderful stories in the book to help you with different ways of approaching it. One woman, Catherine Crew, who's a Vistage chair, and I know there are some of you on the call who know Vistage quite well. She said, I'm reaching the stage where I talk to my members. Vistage chairs have groups of CEOs and key members of companies, and I'm a speaker for Vistage. And she was telling me I went back to my members, think of it as her business, and asked them about how to begin to approach this, a key consideration for us to talk about. And then some of them said, go for it, go retire. And others said, don't, begin to plan something that gives you purpose and meaning, but also pleasure. And she was talking about her relationship with her husband, who has a whole different career trajectory. This is a time for us to be intentional. It requires intentional redesign of your life. So you made it. Yes. Recreate the structure. You listen to folks who are doing that. And Tracy, as you spoke, I said, this is so cool. It went from, I don't know, to I'm beginning to, and that's just great. Find the purpose. So many of you are finding volunteer things, coaching others. One gentleman said to me, I was the CEO of a company, and the most meaningful part of my life was teaching somebody who couldn't read at the age of 55 how to read. And that's given me more blessing than all the work I've ever done. Is work good or bad? Is retirement good or bad? It's what we make it and how we see it. The community that we're doing it with is one that we're going to discover. And one of you asked in your survey, how do I build one here? There's meetups, there's Luster, There are others that somebody was referring to that ARP may have, but you can do it yourself. Put out a little Facebook post and who around here, you are involved in other organizations. Who wants to meet and talk about? One of the Vistage chairs down in Texas a long time ago said he was going to have a group of people who sold their business and wanted to have time together to continue to talk to each other. And it's up to you now to find one that works for you, and it doesn't have to be forever. Part-time or project-based work is a great way to fill in things that you like to do. I don't know if you can be a part-time chiropractor, but you certainly can begin to think about ways to be helping people regain their strength. Invest in your health and well-being. I can never say that often enough. Now, if you look at the chat, there are all kinds of ideas in here. Don't miss them. Janet said there's an online place for women retiring and try to decide what to do now. You can Google it. That's Luster. That's what we love. If you live in an urban area, some of these women meet to have lunch and dinner together. I spent 35 years as a tech Vistage chair. Is that what you did, Rick? How cool. And I love Vistage. I've done 500 workshops. It's cool. Did I do one for you? And then, Nazila, please do also check out and join our start.com. Good. I think that there's got to be lots of gifting back in here, forth here. Ideas are abundant. We talked about our next chapter earlier. What should employers do to prepare for the great exodus? I'm going to put this in here. I have a few moments, but I don't want us to forget how to help the company that we might have left or left us what to do. Because this is a great exodus of retirees, and there's been some writing on it. I wrote a Substack post and a LinkedIn article. They're going to be, all the retirees are going to leave jobs empty and nobody to fill them. So what are we going to do? It's not AI that's going to change the job market, it's us. So if you can talk to a company or introduce us to them, and I'm beginning to pitch them, how do we help them do the knowledge transfer programs that are necessary? How do we offer phased retirements, invest in career-long development, redesign roles for longevity, and support and transition planning, and strengthen the culture and community? Is that all in our hands? Well, at least we can tell them what they don't know. And it's interesting because the HR folks who are planning these programs to help doctors retire or others in management haven't a clue what they're talking about. And so they're talking with education, but not with experience. Go back and begin to knock on the doors and say, you and I had a great relationship. I'd like to come back and at least talk about what retirement's like so you can help those who are retiring plan for it. I think there's a role to be played that we might not have thought about. Some key things that you should know about us, humans. First, I started and I'll end with this. We really do hate change. And so if you found yourself frustrated or still trying to figure it out, you're just a person. And you're in a foreign territory called retirement. And nobody knows what the language is, the food you should eat, who you should talk to, how do you have lunch, time for you to create it. Our mind has a story in it. If you listen to the stories today, they're beginning to change. I used to, but now I am. And skinnying up a house and organizing it is a new purpose that didn't have anything in the old one, but it becomes a new story. And that story is how you're going to live your daily life. Your story is extremely compelling. If you want some research on it, I can get you some great videos, YouTubes, all kinds of stuff, books to read. But once you have a story, then you need to live that story or change it. If not, it will hold you in place with great joy. Because your mind does exactly what it thinks you want it to do. So if you want to be unhappy, go right ahead. If you want to be happy, it's yours to do. If you think the coffee on the porch in the morning is, oh my gosh, I should be at the office, or oh my gosh, this is wonderful, it's the same thing, but you redefined it. You learn better when you're creating with others. You don't need to do it alone. The brain loves co-creation. It loves to talk to people, just like we were doing today. The more, the better. Because nobody has an answer, but we all have great questions and ideas. Habits. The human being is a habit-driven creature here. Notice my dog is as well. We love the habits. So it's very important that you're creating new ones, a little at a time. Small wins win. So when you're doing this, We have covered a great deal of ground today. I'm glad it was as engaging as I had anticipated, but I never know when we do these. We actually got the chat to work. I'm really honored at my own technical skills. But you're in charge now to design your next chapter. Try things, pivot, redirect, start. You don't know where you're going, perfectly fine. Live in the moment, it's perfectly fine. There are some who will tell you that we're futurists, and if we don't know where we're going, it's hard to live today. It's true. We do like to see that. I tend to be a planner, but you don't have to be because you don't quite know all the options. But you do know that I'm free to try them. You don't have to do it alone. And I don't care if you take trips soloist or you're doing it with some neighbor, then celebrate your wins. The small wins win. And that's really important. Every time you have a win, celebrate it. Have a cup of coffee, have a drink, have a go walking, whatever makes you happy. Now, this was not about giving you answers today, but helping you see the questions more clearly. And you are asking great questions. The chat has been wonderful. Um, Marianne Wallace, thank you all for an inspiring session. This is really fun. Rick, we missed each other, I know. I would love to hear last thoughts. So if you could all put into the chat last thoughts, I would love to be able to just hear your voices. I don't have to, we don't have to talk it, but just, chat away. Tracy, thank you so much. So glad I found you. I'm glad too. Appreciate your wisdom. Thank you, Jack. I appreciate yours as well, and I'd love to hear about your groups. The science behind yes. Helpful to hear how the research about humans fits into all this. Me too. I'm really studying humans through a period of change, and I've done that for my whole career, and I'm really deep into it now, living it. Yes, Deb, the other journeys give us some sense of how people are doing this. We're on the brink of a new mindset of retirement. I think that's our next book. Now, let me end with a little pitch. We're doing monthly free webinars to listen to others. And May 19th is my next one. And I have Karen Greenbaum, who found herself unexpectedly retired. She was given 2 years to move off. And she's the one who said to me, I have nothing on the calendar for the rest of my life. I'd love to tell my story. And John Sampson, who is a Vistage chair, who moved where his grandkids were only to find them moving away. And now he's moving also. And he wants to share his own experiences about business, non-business life. And so May 19th is our next one. It's from 12 to 1. Our masterclass is a bigger deep dive into all of this that we'll be doing June 2nd from noon to 2. And this is about actually doing it. So if you know people who are maybe not as far along as you, and you want to sit down and design the next stage of your life, that's what we're going to start. And it's a 2-hour, it's not a 2-day, but I thought I would make this a little bit more interactive and actually break into breakout groups and actually talk to each other about it. And I think you'll find an experience that is, worth experiencing. And then I have a 2-day retreat. Tracy was in one. We had 2 other wonderful women from Leicester. And from their experiences and their recommendations, I have 2 11 to 5 days set aside in July. It may be a good time of year or not, but it's set aside for us to deeply dive into you, because what they found was this was a time of rethinking themselves. They wanted to begin to build it together. And so we started with a 1-day, made it a 2-day. So I have July 21st and 2nd there. You can do the QR code to learn more. You can also do andisimon.com under workshops. It's all there. And a URL that, if you like, would be there as well. And me. And I can only tell you what a pleasure it's been. And I can only tell you how much I am honored that you've all come. Thank you for the kind words in the chat. And thank you all for bringing friends. And the more you like, the more I'd love to talk to you. If you want to have a one-on-one session, I'd love to give an hour free time. Call me. And I'll put you can find it on the QR code. You'll get all the information you need. Thank you, each of you. It's been a pleasure. I'm going to say goodbye because I think we've all had a lot of time together. And I don't think I need the other 10 minutes. Anybody want 10 more minutes? Or are we good to say goodbye? Goodbye, everybody. It's been a pleasure. Bye bye now.